Did you know that prior to 1971, there was no Bangladesh? There was Pakistan. So starting for 200 years, starting 1757, Britain was actually ruling that country, which was then Pakistan. And then in 1857, the rule was transferred to the British Raj. But then in 1947, the British Raj had to give up its power to the subcontinents of the countries of India and Pakistan. And then Pakistan was divided into two, the Western Pakistan and then the Eastern Pakistan. The Eastern Pakistan is what we know now as Bangladesh. But it wasn't until they went into war in 1971 that they actually gained their independence. In that war, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh were all involved, but they all fought the same war, but they have three different versions. Before I begin, let me do a disclaimer. I'm not an expert on this subject. I actually got all the information that I will be sharing with you in this video from the book written by Anam Zakaria, and the title of the book is The Great Divide: A Journey into Pakistan Administered Kashmir. So one book doesn't make comprehensive research, but I think this is a start, and I would like to start just to share this interesting book that I've read. So the 1947 war, it all involved Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India, but they all have their own versions. Of course, to the Bangladesh people, that's their war of independence. To India, that's a proof of their military superiority, and to Pakistan, that's just an insignificant event in their history. So let's do the Bangladesh first. For the Bangladesh, it started when the Pakistani decided that they don't want to accept Bengali as a state language of Pakistan. Then that sort of inspired other unfortunate things, unfortunate relationship between the two, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The Western Pakistan sort of considered themselves to be the elite, and they discriminated the Eastern part. There's that, so that's the economic disparity, that's one. And then there's the demeaning attitude towards the Bengali culture and the Bengali population. So they always treated the Eastern people to be less than who they are. In December 1970, Awami League Party actually won the election. It was led by Sheikh Muhibur Rahman, and they came from the Eastern Pakistan, from the eastern part of Pakistan. So they won the national elections, but Western Pakistan parties, namely the Pakistan People's Party, refused to hand over power. So that was when the divide happened. So those who favored what the West was doing, they moved to the western part, and then those who favored this new administration that actually won the election, they started moving to the east. And so the Bihari communities in the eastern part, they suffered the most. They started getting attacks, and in March 1971, using that violence, the thing that was already happening, the Pakistan army actually intervened. So they recruited pro-Pakistan Bengalis and non-Bengalis, including members of the Islamic organization Jamaat-e-Islami, for its operation against the Bengali fraction, against the Eastern Pakistan, now we know as Bangladesh. As the violence escalated over time, a number of refugees actually went to India, to New Delhi, and that was used by India to participate in the war. So they became involved basically. And then that ended. So that conflict actually lasted 9 months, and it ended with the surrender of the Pakistani army. December 16, and that was when the surrender happened. The death count is anywhere between 300,000 to 3 million. So there's really no exact count, or not even close to being an exact count. Since the end of the war, there's been different factions and different parties that have been trying to sort of dictate the narrative of the war that happened. First is the Awami League. They are perceived to be pro-India. And then there's the Bangladesh military, and Bangladesh National Party, which has been deemed to be pro-Pakistan and pro-Islam. So when it was actually Mujib who ended up being the leader after independence, and he banned anyone perceived to be pro-Pakistani. He was assassinated in 1975, and General Zayur Rahman seized power and he lifted the ban. Now Sheikh Hasina, the daughter of Mujib, actually ran for election and promised that she was going to bring justice to those who are pro-Pakistani. Now she's getting criticized, saying that she's just using it to retaliate against political enemies. However, there's a certain section actually in Bangladesh who became stateless after some time, and it was only recently, 2008, when the Supreme Court judge extended citizenship to these people. Now, for India, they consider it their finest victory. They have their own history against the Pakistani. They said that back in 1947, when the Pakistanis quote unquote broke them, so they of course don't take that lightly. So when they assisted the Bangladesh community, when they assisted Bangladesh in that war, the call for independence, and they actually won, they used it sort of solidified their military superiority over Bangladesh. Now they have used this event in their history as a rah-rah to their own soldiers. If they ever encounter anything that discourages them or whatever, they bring back this event to encourage everybody and prove to everybody that their military is superior. They also since then realized that you need a very strong military to support your country, and so they have made it a point to sort of improve their military. They've paid attention to the improvement of their military equipment, training, etc. On the other hand, for the Pakistanis, they sort of downplayed this part in their history. But it did one thing though, it sort of gave them this never again mentality. They promised themselves that they will never again lose another war. And so because of that, they also have relentlessly tried and still trying to continuously improve their military to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Now, 50 years after that event, all three countries are still using that part of their history to sort of fuel and inspire their country's determination to do better, especially on the military front. Unfortunately, according to the book that I've read, there's still a lot of people that are still being ignored, people whose lives were changed because of the war or affected because of the war. I can't say much. I wish I know more, but this is really the only book that I've read about that incident. It's just fascinating that prior to 1971, there was no Bangladesh. I hope to read more, and if you have anything to share. I heard, according to the book that I've read, 50 years after the war, there's still a lot of people who got affected by the war, whose lives were changed because of the war, and their needs are still not met. I hope that it gets resolved soon, but personally, I hope that I could read more books, do more research. I hope that if there are any Pakistani or Bangladesh viewers or Indian viewers out there, if you have your own information to share about your history, about this specific war, please go ahead.